Hey folks, Mike here with The Long Shot. Today we're going to be talking about the new Athlon RangeCraft chronograph. Is this a chrono for the people due to its price, or is it cheap Chinese junk? We'll be testing it against the Garmin Xero in a few different configurations today. Stick around, see how it does. Let's go. All right, before we get into it, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click that like button, smash it, thumbs up, whatever you want to call it. Please do go ahead and drop a comment. That's one of the best ways that you can help the algorithm pick up this video and push it out. YouTube is pretty anti-2A, so they keep a lot of gun videos suppressed and demonetized. So please go ahead and do your part to help the community by dropping a comment down below on what you think about this content. Let's get into it. All right, so at SHOT Show this year, which I had the pleasure of going to, Athlon made the bold claim that they were going to match the Garmin Xero and even provide some more features on top of what the Garmin has for half the price. Did that really pan out? We're gonna do some testing and see. I've been using this unit for about a week and a half now, and just in the spirit of openness, this was provided by Athlon for free to do review and testing, but also I have a second one that I bought with my own money. I have no sponsorship or allegiance to Athlon. My allegiance is to the people, to you, to give you the best review possible. So I just wanted to call that out. And also, I've been using the Garmin Xero since it came out, which I think it's been about a year and a half. This was a total game changer, giving you a, kind of GoPro-sized Doppler radar to set up next to your gun and get your chronograph and your speeds. Everybody has this in the competition shooting world now, and even a lot of enthusiasts that don't shoot, because it is so handy to set it up, point it down range, and get your average speed, your extreme spread, your standard deviation. If you're new to chronographs, let me tell you why they're important. In order to get good ballistic data, so you're hitting your target downrange and you're appropriately counting for the drop of the bullet, the force of gravity, the effects of wind, and other external ballistics, you need to know the speed of your bullet. However, ballistics are still kind of a wild card. While you can do your best to come up with quality loads, you're never going to be shooting exactly one speed. You're always going to be within a certain range. The tighter the range, the better, because then you can basically put in your average speed as an input to your ballistic calculator and have a much better chance of understanding exactly where that bullet is going to be at different yardages downrange. Previously, before the Garmin Xero came out, that was kind of like the disruptor in the industry. There were a few different types of chronographs out there. There were Caldwell ones that you had to like shoot through these gates, and it would pick up the shadow of the bullet and estimate the speed. Those were honestly no bueno. Then there was, lab radar that was like this big unit that took a lot of setup that you would point down range. And then there was the magneto speed, which hung on your barrel. So again, at SHOT Show in 2025, earlier this year, Athlon announced that they were coming out with a chrono. It was going to have more features. It was going to be integrated with their ballistics app, and it was going to be at half the price of the Garmin. Now, the first claim that I will say didn't really pan out is you can't really get it for half the price of the Garmin. Athlon does offer a military discount, so you can go through Expert Voice and get it at a discount, and maybe then it's about half the price. The Garmin price has come down a little bit. I think it's around $599, and most of the prices I was seeing on the Athlon Chrono was around $399 to the public without the military discount. However, that's still a pretty significant difference. But it is important to know if this is quality. Obviously, for competitive shooters, the difference of $200 between $399 and $599, if the Garmin is truly better and that much higher quality, that's like a day of ammo, the cost. So it's not that much. And I would say if we find out that Athlon is not actually better or is not actually up to the quality, then one could say, well, just stick with the Garmin, because you really want to have quality inputs when you're doing your long range ballistics. So today we're going to do some shooting. I got my friend Brian out here. You can see we have a table full of guns and gear. It's kind of a mess. That's how you know we're legit. And we're going to do some shooting today. He's doing load development on a new 20-inch DMR AR-15 that he built. That's a 5.56, or actually it's chambered in 223 Wild. All right, so one of the first things that's different about the RangeCraft is it has a lot more buttons, whereas the Garmin has an OK, a return/power button, and an up and down arrow. The RangeCraft has power, option, delete, OK, and then up and down arrows on the side. Otherwise, they're pretty similar. The RangeCraft is a little bit bigger, but pretty similar size. They both come with a neat little tripod. I do like the one that the RangeCraft comes with. It's nice quality. It screws on with a normal like 1/4 inch tripod type screw, but you usually only ever need this. Now, Athlon, and I believe the Garmin as well, Athlon doesn't recommend mounting this to the gun. I've never mounted mine to the gun. I'm not sure if that voids warranty, but I believe they claim that it's not meant for the shock of being mounted to the gun. The first thing about the RangeCraft that I don't think is as good as the Garmin, and what I've noticed is when you pull up the first screen on the Garmin from turning it on, it tells you, here, let's do that right now. So let me just say resume session. It tells you 5 to 15 inches from the barrel, and the RangeCraft tells you 4 to 10 inches from the barrel. Now, that may seem negligible, but what I've noticed with the RangeCraft, like I said, this is not my first time shooting it. I don't like to give a review the first time I'm experiencing something because then I can't speak to it that well. But what I've noticed is the further that the RangeCraft has gotten away from the barrel, the bigger delta in the speed that I was getting from the RangeCraft versus what I thought I should be getting. And a couple times I got like 30 or 50 feet per second more than I believe the shot was. But that was when I was laying in the prone before I got this nice wire spool here as kind of a table at my home range. So I noticed while this was outside of the bounds of the 4 to 10 inch distance from the barrel, I was getting erratic shots. Now you can't really fault Athlon on that because they tell you this has got to be within 10 inches of the barrel, but it's an extra note that you have 5 extra inches of play on the X or Y axis to be from the barrel with the Garmin. Second thing I noticed with this was actually that the RangeCraft resets quicker. So one of my issues with the Garmin is if you are doing, trying to get a quick, 5 or 10 shot group on an AR, you feel like you have to wait for that to reset so you don't shoot too soon and miss a shot. So the RangeCraft, I'm not sure if I am able to time it, but the RangeCraft definitely resets quicker, and you'll be able to see that when we put some rounds down range here. Either way, getting into, here, let me turn it back off again. The first screen is it tells you your alignment, you hit OK, you can do a quick start session, select rifle, select your general speed range, and now you're ready to go. So getting it set up is pretty simple, and making sure you're pointed down range and you're within that 4 to 10 feet per second is critical, but setup is super simple. Oh, we lost one. Immediately lost, had a muzzle brake casualty. They're all like pretty close to each other, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
2665. Yeah.
When I was shooting with my bolt gun, they were about 10 feet per second difference between the RangeCraft and the Garmin. So we got 2665, 2667, 2664.
Yeah.
Awesome. We keep blowing this one away.
Let's put it like right here.
2669. Well, it's supposed to be
2677, but it also got knocked over, so.
Yeah.
And then 2668, so those two are closest.
Probably because of the backward lean of the table.
2666, 26.
Hold on, let me fix this one. Oh, that's why. Okay.
And bolt lock back. Nice.
The RangeCraft is like noticeably faster to reset than the Garmin.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So this one is, what, how many feet per second? 4 feet per second faster, but it's also further away.
What's going on here?
Nature.
All right, let's check the SDs. So,
See that.
can return. So I like this actually about this one is you hit the back button and it gives you like a quick summary. The Garmin doesn't do that. You have to like end your session and go back and then find it. So that's pretty awesome. So your average is 2674.7, your SD is 8.9.
Nice.
Let's see what the Garmin came up with. So see, I have to end session and then I have to go to history, which is really silly. Like I just wish Garmin would fix that because I feel like they could with a firmware update. All right, that says 2670 average with an SD of 7.8.
Okay, close. 2674. It's going to be 8.9.
Yeah. I mean, that's like less than a percent. That's like 1/10 of a percent
Yeah.
of variation, which is
Pretty sweet.
I would say negligible. If it's like within 1% for me, then I would call it good. What did your data say from the other RangeCraft?
Average 2674, standard deviation 8.9.
Okay, this is pretty much exact. And this one fell over every single time from your muzzle brake.
Yeah.
Cool. Those are pretty close.
So this is 2682, 2678, 2675.
Okay, so they're all within 7 feet per second. The two RangeCrafts are 4 apart.
And that one's in the middle.
And the one RangeCraft is 7 more than the Garmin.
Yeah. How's it feel to be like downwind of this brake?
Not good.
Okay. Well, get used to it.
Feels like we're on the EOD range blowing some stuff up.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This gun loves burgers.
Is that a good group?
Oh yeah, they're all touching.
Nice.
I still got 2 more though. Oh, not touching anymore.
2715. Wow, that one is considerably faster.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Check.
So now we got this RangeCraft off to the left side, which was kind of getting blown back from the muzzle brake, is 15 feet per second faster than this one and 10 feet per second faster than the Garmin. But still, to get some perspective, 15 feet per second is like 0.5% of the total.
One more. $27.03.
2730.
30, 27.30.
2732.
All right. Bolt lock.
All right, so I know you only saw us shoot a little bit on this video, but I shot this over the past week a few different times. Didn't see value in adding the bolt gun to this video, but let's just talk about recap and what we think about the units. So the first thing, now what I like about it may not be what you like about it. That's fine, but I'll try to expose all of the things that I've noticed. Again, testing the accuracy of these is really difficult when you're just comparing unknown quantities to each other. We trust the Garmin, but that's because that's the only thing we've had, so we can't necessarily say that's more precise. What I did notice is that they were all within a reasonable amount. Like I'm talking like 0.1 to 0.2% of the total velocity of that shot, which I think is pretty good across the board for the Garmin and the RangeCraft. However, as you saw, we did struggle with one unit. You know, my wire spool is slanted back a bit, and we shoot muzzle brakes for our competition DMR guns, and the one on the left side kept getting blown back. Then I moved it all the way to the right side, and now it was outside of the range that Athlon tells you to get it in, that 4 to 10 inches from the barrel on the X and the Y axis. And that lines up with what I noticed before. When it's outside the range, you start getting some erratic shots, and you can't really trust that data. So that brings me to my first point for the RangeCraft, is it's a little bit more finicky as far as where it's positioned in relation to the barrel. You really have to make sure it's within that published distance of the barrel so that you're getting good and accurate data. If you're pushing that outside those 10 inches, I can guarantee that while you'll probably still be in the general range, it's probably going to artificially open up, you know, the extreme spread and the standard deviation of that load that you're working to chronograph. So that's kind of like all I can comment on precision. Again, these are only I would call them 2 data points because I have 2 units. They were all within a reasonable amount. Sometimes it bounced around where one chrono would be 10 feet per second more, 10 feet per second less. But for a majority of the shots, they were all within, you know, a couple of feet per second. And again, the one that was catching the erratic shots was either falling over. Actually, most of the shots where it fell over, it still did kind of match what the other one said, or it was outside of the range. So you can't really consider that as giving you bad data because you're not following Athlon's published, you know, acceptable distance from the barrel. So that's kind of accuracy. That's all I'll comment on that because we don't have some super expensive radar system that we can compare them to, and comparing them to one another is the best we have, but it's not a super accurate method of determining accuracy. However, you know, from what I found, they were all within acceptable distance of each other. The next thing is like usability. I actually do like the RangeCraft. At first I was a little skeptical of having more buttons, but as you'll notice us comment a few times in the video, it was a lot quicker to end a session and get back to a new session. And it's actually like a one button click. All you have to do is hit this return, and now it backs out and it shows you a quick summary of your session data, which I really like. That's one of the annoying things about the Garmin, is you have to go back, end the session, and then it brings you to a home screen. Now you have to go to the history and find the session and open that and click the summary to get your data. So a few more button clicks. It's a little confusing and clunky to get there. But with the Athlon, you can just back out and it shows you your session summary. And then you can back out again and, two more times. And now you're at quick start session. So you can get within a few more clicks, within less clicks total, you can get back to a new session than with the Garmin. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another plus in the RangeCraft category is that it resets way quicker than the Garmin. It says analyzing, and then it flashes the muzzle velocity of that shot, whereas the Garmin is thinking about it for a second or two. So I find that pretty impressive. If you are doing like rapid fire AR shooting, you're going to pick up a lot more shots. If you're shooting a bolt gun, probably really doesn't matter, especially if you're zeroing, which is most of the time when we're doing this. I don't chrono my rounds when I'm shooting in competition. I don't mount it to the gun. If I'm zeroing a bolt gun, by the time you get on and ready to shoot that next bullet, the Garmin's ready too. So probably shouldn't be shooting fast enough for that to make a difference, but it is pretty cool that the RangeCraft is able to get the value much quicker than the Garmin. I didn't expect this to be better at all. I was kind of just hoping it was almost as good as the Garmin because it was cheaper. Now, it does give you the option to pair it with the Athlon Ballistics app. However, this is probably my biggest downside, and nothing against the unit itself. The app is very clunky. Like, I'm never going to use that as my ballistic calculator. And I didn't find a ton of value in associating the bullet speed or the session summary to a bullet profile that I built in the app. It's super easy to just go into either my Kestrel or to my Applied Ballistics or Hornady app and just put in the average feet per second. And I don't really need any history of that. Like, it's changing over time. I'm getting new data. So what it was a few months ago, I don't really care. I keep load data in my book. So if I think this is a good load, I write down that speed, but I never expect that speed to be the same based on a myriad different conditions. That speed is always going to change a little bit. And that's part of the value in having the chronograph itself, is you can always just get a new speed, update your ballistic calculator data, and now you're up and running. So I don't see a ton of value in that. And if you think you're going to get this and then get like a free ballistic calculator app that's going to be super awesome to use, again, I found that very clunky to create bullet profiles. The bullet data library was nowhere near as great as Hornady or Applied Ballistics, and creating my own bullet and gun profile was very frustrating. I'm a very picky user. I don't like to have to fumble around too much. It should just be very intuitive, and I found it not intuitive at all, and I didn't really see the value that would force me to struggle through that clunky app to associate a session to the bullet profile. There's nothing else that I can really comment on the Athlon RangeCraft itself. Everything else performed as expected. There were a few times where the Athlons were 10 or 15 feet per second apart from one another. But again, as you saw, we were struggling with the one staying up and keeping the units close enough to the barrel of the gun because that muzzle brake was blowing them back. And again, even if they're 15 feet per second off, I would say consistency across one chronograph is probably more important than getting the most accurate bullet data, because no matter what that number is, that's what you're going to load to, that's what you're going to put in your calculator and adjust off of. So whether two of them give me 10 or 15 feet per second, and in the grand scheme of thing, let's say 15 feet per second on a 3,000 foot per second bullet, that is still 0.5% of variation. So that's really not that much, and I'm not sure that's going to make a huge difference in your shooting and where your bullet's going to end up, unless you're doing like way extreme long range. And then I would say external ballistics, wind reading, things like that are going to be more consequential to trying to hit where you're trying to hit than 10 or 15 feet per second difference. Other usability features of the unit, again guys, I have nothing really big to comment on this. It charges the same with USB-C. It comes with a nice sturdy little tripod. The unit is a little bigger. Oops, I don't have the case out here. It comes with a nice zipper soft case. There's really not much I can say about it other than it performed as expected. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised. When I first shot this, I was in the prone, I wasn't following the directions, and I was getting some weird results. But I went back, I worked through it, I started following Athlon's directions on how close it needs to be to the barrel, and I think it's performing pretty well, and I'm actually pretty surprised. I was really worried when I started this endeavor that I was going to have to say it's not up to quality with a Garmin, but I don't think at this point I can say that. I think it's at least as good as the Garmin, and then even some of the features that they delivered are better than the Garmin. I'm really annoyed that Garmin does not fix some of these annoyances with the UI, the user interface, that they all know we have, where it's like really annoying to manage sessions. Oh, one more thing I forgot, and I'm sorry guys. You can go, say you have one shot that you want to delete, which I don't recommend it, but say you do get an erroneous data point, or you have one bullet that is like the unit falls over and it gives you some wonky number, you can go delete that from your shot string so that you can save the session. So, you know, you can pull some data points out, get your SD down to 1, and tell your friends that you're the best reloader in the world. While that's, you know, I'm joking, but you can, if you somehow happen to have an erratic shot or data point, a flyer, or whatever, you can pull that out, and I don't believe that Garmin does that. And one thing I do know, I have an Athlon thermal that I really like. They're constantly improving and updating the firmware, so I think they do a pretty good job at managing software. So I don't have any data to support this based on what they've said, but I do know with my previous history in being a user of some select Athlon products, they will continue to update the firmware. So I hope they do on this, and you know, take a note from users, or continue to update the software, the usability, the features. I really hope if they're going to invest in the app that they continue to make it better. The app is, again, not my favorite. I can't really recommend that to anybody with things like Hornady forward off or apply ballistics or, you know, Kestrel's out there. So that's unfortunate, but to me, when I buy a chronograph, I'm not buying a ballistic app, so it doesn't really matter. So that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Pleasantly surprised at the quality of the Athlon RangeCraft. If you are looking to save money, don't shy away from it, and especially if you can get a military discount because you've served our country, go ahead and get that military discount on Expert Voice, and that will even make it significantly cheaper and much closer to the initial claim of it being half the price of the Garmin. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you next time on The Long Shot. Take care.